It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy. This is the Matt Murphy Show, just after 4 o'clock, 4:08 to be precise. Let's get back into it. Good conversation with Courtney Johnston moments ago about the Metro Nashville budgets. A lot of frustration over those, and Courtney is obviously as frustrated as the next person, but we will continue those discussions throughout the course of the day and throughout the course of the summertime. Also, a very important discussion to be had regarding Cheatham County, and I'll tell you, and as I do, try to kind of reset it for you. Heard little smatterings about some of this stuff, but really I was not fully intimately aware of what was going on until our next guest made me aware of it, and he has championed this issue. He is a son of Cheatham County, believes that the last thing Cheatham County needs is a methane plant in the backyard of our neighbors over there. And John Rich, country music superstar, joins us to talk about his progress in making more aware of what's happening in our neck of the woods. Hey, John.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me on.
Man, it's always a pleasure and a privilege, and I so appreciate you. And I know that I reflect the voice of this radio station and this community. Thank you for drawing this to the attention that it deserves, because I don't know that a lot of people knew about it, except for those who are going to be directly impacted by it in Cheatham County. Just give us kind of a reset on what's going on and where we are.
Several years ago, the TVA purchased a little over 200 acres, 200 to 300 acres of land in the middle of Cheatham County. And they have laid out a plan and a draft to build a 900 megawatt methane plant, which includes 10 acres, which I've recently learned, the more I've dug into this, 10 acres of lithium batteries. Now, these are not like lithium batteries like what you'd run your trolling motor off of on your boat. These are the size of a Connex. Like each battery is the size of a huge storage container, 10 acres of those. So they own the land, but that's not really the story. The story is that the gas lines running off that land, the transmission lines running off that land, the proximity of Sycamore Creek to that land, you're looking at a quarter of a mile away, is the main water source for Pleasant View, Tennessee, Ashland City, Tennessee. There are 5 schools less than 5 miles from this proposed plant. One of the schools is actually less than 2 miles from this proposed plant. So that's the basics of what it is. I mean, it's a grotesque move by the TVA when you do have alternatives sitting around industrial areas that it could be put in. Humphreys County, Senator Roberts has reached out to me and said, hey, we've got a deactivated coal plant that Biden shut down a few years ago. Our county lost a ton of jobs. We would love the TVA to come back and turn that thing back on. It's got a pipeline already running to Nashville. Please tell the TVA to come see me. We'd love to have them. So there are all kinds of alternatives, but TVA up to this point has decided, nope, it's Cheatham County or nothing. And what's interesting, Matt, is TVA in Knoxville at their headquarters, they have a sign, they have a slogan. This is kind of their go-to thing that they tell everybody. We don't go where we're not wanted. That's what they say at their town hall meetings. That's what they say in their interviews. There's a guy named Justin Meyerhofer. Justin Meyerhofer, he's their senior vice president of government and public relations. And if you look him up, you'll hear him say that phrase over and over and over. We don't go where we're not wanted. Well, in Cheatham County, it is a 100% pushback against this project. Nobody's in favor of it. The mayor of the county is not. The mayor of Pleasant View is not. The mayor of Ashland City is not. Nobody is for this, but they continue to come forward. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I think we're doing kind of a download here to your audience. So most people don't realize the TVA was started in 1933 by FDR. And the way FDR set it up was that the TVA would only answer to the President of the United States. It's still that way today, all the way from 1933. So the TVA operates with the ultimate executive authority. They basically walk around going, what are you going to do about it? Go talk to the president if you have a problem with it. So here's one example of something they've done in Cheatham County. There's a lady named Mrs. Nicholson. She's almost 90 years old, suffers from dementia. She lives on her family farm that's been in her family for over 100 years. The TVA knows that if they do this project, they're going to have to run gas lines and transmission wires and all kinds of stuff through this woman's farm. So they show up out there, 12 vehicles and armed agents. So guys with loaded pistols, tactical gear, bulletproof vests. It looked like an ATF raid. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen the video myself. And yes, there is video of the entire thing. One of the neighbors came out with a GoPro and videoed the TVA marching across this old lady's field like the army and coming up to her property. When asked, hey, why are you on her property? They turned to the neighbor, and the main TVA agent said, you speak to your counsel if you want to convey a message to me.
What?
So that's exactly right. So they show up in force to intimidate and terrorize, really, regular old people that have committed no crime. Now, let me tell you what that steps on, Matt. That steps on a little thing called the Fourth Amendment.
Amen.
The Fourth Amendment says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. No warrant shall be issued except for probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and specifically describing the place to be searched. So they have no warrant, they have no probable cause. If the Sheriff's Department, DHS, FBI, CIA, ATF, anybody wanted to show up and say, we're going to come on your property, they would have to have a warrant and probable cause, but not the TVA, not the TVA. And so when the residents say, hey, you can't come on my property. No, I'm not letting you on my farm. They go, okay, and then they leave, and then they sue that resident and drag them into court. Right now in Cheatham County, you've got 40 to 50 lawsuits and a bunch more coming against those citizens who refuse to allow TVA to trespass on their property. And here's the really sad part of the story concerning that part of it, is a big percentage of those families do not have the income to even hire counsel to represent them in the courtroom. So these poor folks are walking in with no attorney, coming up against TVA, which is probably worth $1 trillion at this point, and there's effectively no way to fight them. So when I learned this whole story and situation, being a guy who went to high school in Cheatham County, my brother has a farm there, my dad lives there, my granny Rich ran a business in Ashland City for 20 years. When I learned that these folks had no way to fight back, that's when I decided to step in.
Well, and we appreciate that you did, because it's drawing so much attention to this, but it feels like the attention needs to get to one guy, and that's President Donald Trump, because I know, as well as you know, John, right now with Beth Gear getting fired from the board, that the board makes all of the operational decisions about this type of thing. They're answerable to the president. Well, right now, am I not right that there's only three positions filled out of 9, so they don't even have a quorum on the board. And I would think you know President Trump better than me, John, but I would think if we appeal to him, hey, President Trump, we don't need to make any future decisions about what's going on until your people get on the board so that they can look at all of this junk that the Biden administration's been doing.
Yeah, you were correct. They are down to 3 board members. Trump fired Beth Greer. Beth Greer worked for Al Gore back in the day, so she's a holdover from the Gore era. Trump also fired their former COO. He fired him a few months ago, and normally the president would appoint a new CEO, COO of the TVA, but the TVA decided they would just appoint their own guy. So they just elevated somebody in the company and made him the boss. And so, yes, Trump can absolutely stop it, but here's the thing. I don't think we should have to call the president for this to stop. I will call the president for this to stop if it gets to that point. But I'll tell you this, Justin Meyerhofer came to my house this past Friday.
Oh, wow.
So he came to my house. He walked in my front door. We sat down for about 30 minutes, and I explained to him, if you guys don't back up out of Cheatham County, drop the lawsuits, apologize to Miss Nicholson for bringing guns and bulletproof vests on her property, I will take this to the president, and it won't be just to stop your project. It'll be to stop your project, but I'll be calling for him to fire every single one of you, starting with you. because you cannot treat American citizens like that in the United States of America. You cannot violate the Fourth Amendment of citizens all over. It's in Cheatham County, but it's happening in a lot of other places too. You cannot do that to people and get away with it. And so this is where it will ultimately end up. I call it a campaign, Matt. I said, I'm on a campaign right now. I'm not running for governor or running for Mark Green's seat or something like that. This is the campaign I'm interested in. I'm interested in campaigning against the TVA on behalf of people who can't even afford an attorney to go into court. And I think we're going to win. I've got protest concerts lined up. I've got national press. Yes, this is a local issue, Matt. I'm going to make it a national story. And when I say national, you know what I mean by that.
I know exactly.
And I'm not just talking about Fox News. I'm talking about 60 Minutes. I'm talking about ABC.
What's
interesting is,
no, I'm sorry to interrupt you. How did you react?
The left also hates TVA. The left hates them too.
How did this
dude? Maybe one of the only times.
Maybe
one of the only times I work with the left on something.
How did they react? How did he react when you told him what your plans were? Because you're one of the most straightforward guys that I know. You tell people where you are. You tell them where you're going. How did he react to that?
Well, I told him, I said, if you don't back up, I'm going to find out what your pain tolerance is. I'm going to find out what it is. I'm going to continue going until I find out what your breaking point is. And if your breaking point is sitting in the Oval Office in front of Donald Trump and we have this discussion in front of him, then, man, I will be surprised by that. But good for you. You're tougher than I thought. His response to me was, we really don't want to see that happen. We really, really don't want that to happen. The TVA does a lot of good things for people. You know, we do flood control and we build all this infrastructure and stuff. And I said, you know what? I don't doubt that the TVA has done good things. I said, but let me put it to you like this. Let's say a man who spent his whole life doing great things for other people, his whole life, and then he walked up in your grandmother's front yard and slapped her across the face. Would you care at that point that he had done good things his whole life up to that point, or would you knock his brains out in the front yard? And he looked at me and he said, I just put my mother in a rest home. She's in her 80s. I would have a real problem with that. I said, that's you. That's who you are. That's what TVA is. That's what you're doing to people right now. So there's a song I wrote in the past 2 or 3 days. I told the guy, I said, music is going to come to bear. And I said, my goal with the song is that I get tens of millions of people singing along to a song that compares TVA to the devil. And so I've got a song called The Devil and the TVA. It has been written. It will be recorded. It will be released.
Love it.
And I'm going to tattoo these guys. I'm going to rebrand them to what they actually are, which in my opinion is a tyrannical, unchecked agency of the federal government that violates the Fourth Amendment of the citizens of our country.
Well, and one final thought on this in the couple of minutes that we have left, John, because I've yet to get an answer to the question. You obviously sat down with, to use your analogy, the devil himself in your house, talking with him. Have they given any reason why it has to be there, why it can't be at another place? You mentioned, decommissioned coal plants and whatnot. Why? I mean, do you get any answer as to why it has to go there?
No answer.
No.
I asked that question directly multiple times. The mayor of Cheatham County has asked that question. The mayor of Pleasant View has asked that question. And they just look at them and go, basically read the papers. Just read the paper. They won't answer the question. They'll go, read our plans. They blow it off. It begs the question, is there something else going on? How many kickbacks are going on in this deal? I don't know. Something else is happening because this is the most ridiculous place to drop it. So Justin Meyerhofer lives in Brentwood. And I asked him, I said, why don't we just put this in Brentwood, Justin? Let's put it in Brentwood. And boy, he started squirming around in his chair. I said, what is that? Would that be a problem? He goes, well, there's way too much development in Brentwood. I said, no, you wouldn't do it in Brentwood because people have enough money there to fight you in court. But in Cheatham County, they don't. You go pick on the lower income counties.
That's right.
Because they can't fight you. I said, but this time you stepped on the wrong country boy. You stepped on the wrong one. And then I picked up my cell phone and I had Donald Trump's phone number. And I showed it to him. I said, "Do you have this phone number?" He said, "No, sir." I said, "I do." I said, "I really don't want to have to call him. I think this should be handled between us. Get out of the county. But if you're not going to get out, man, we're going to make that phone call and we're going to run you out through the president. Oh, by the way, I'm going to tell him he needs to fire every last one of you." So we're not playing with him, Matt. It's not a game, not chit-chat. It's not wordplay. This is real consequences you're talking about in this county, and we're taking it very seriously.
I absolutely love all of it. I know that there's, I mean, we've got the summer, right? I mean, I know there's a big meeting coming up in September, I guess it is, to finalize some of this stuff. But we can make the push through the summer and stop this. I mean, and look, you're the tip of the spear, but we got your back. Anything we can do for you, anything you need, any information you need to get out, you just say the word and we'll get it out, John.
Well, I'll make a request of you and WTN right now. Why don't you reach out to Justin Meyerhofer?
I'm down
and
with
invite
it. Yep.
him onto your show and let him defend their position. I'd be happy to join him, and you can hear our discussion in real time live on the radio.
Would love it. I'm on it. That happens. I'm out next week for shoulder surgery, but that happens before I go out, and I will get back to you. We'll try to make that happen. See what old Justin has to say about it, John. I absolutely love it. We'll do it.
I'd love it. I appreciate it, Matt.
Listen,
thanks, sir.
Thank you for everything you do. You know how much we appreciate you, and keep fighting the good fight, brother.
Will do.
All right, take care. There's John Rich joining us for a good 20 minutes or so. Back in a moment. Quick timeout. I've got Michael Lotfy here. He's with Americans for Prosperity, and he's got a couple of connections in Cheatham County as well. We'll talk about his thoughts on all of this coming up in just a moment on Super Talk.